when we talk about that first sentence around democratization, this is how we do it. It's not necessarily going out and just hiring 100 new data scientists. It's really nurturing the culture of UPS by taking the people that are already there that we've identified as high potential, investing in them, and then seeing that ROI come back around full circle. They're energized, they're motivated, they've learned all these new things, they have a new certificate under their wing, they've accomplished all this, and then in return, UPS is getting all of this new talent that lives in the business.
Welcome to This is Digital, a podcast brought to you by West Monroe. Join us as we talk to leading experts about bringing the digital mindset to your organization.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to This is Digital, a podcast where we break down the latest digital trends and share tips on how you and your company can be digital. I'm Joe Brown. I'm a senior partner at West Monroe in our technology and experience practice, and I'm so excited to be hosting one of our season 4 episodes. I've just joined West Monroe a few months ago from the design and innovation firm IDEO, where for 13 years I led all kinds of crazy projects in product strategy and design, often helping companies adopt new technologies and change the way they shape their products in order to change their position in the market. And as you can imagine, every single time that you think about changing your products, it leads to all kinds of different cultural changes inside the company. And that's why I'm so excited to be here today, talking with today's guest, who's leading a large-scale cultural change inside of UPS. In today's episode, we answer some questions like, how can you leverage data science and AI to tackle strategic challenges and drive innovation across the organization? What are some kinds of upskilling opportunities and initiatives companies can take to ensure employee growth? And how can you balance technological advancements and adoption across multiple teams? Hopefully you'll get some inspiration to create upskilling programs and opportunities for your organization. So hi, I'm pleased to introduce you to Stefanie Khan, who is a Director of Business Intelligence and Data Analytics at UPS. Stefanie leads a team of data scientists and engineers, and her work is deeply rooted in hardcore machine learning and advanced algorithms, driving initiatives that are truly future forward. Welcome to the podcast, Stefanie.
Thanks so much, Joe. A pleasure to be here with you.
Nice. Well, we're stoked to have you. I'd love to learn a little bit more about your team and how it's structured. We know in lots of different companies, we seem to see different models for how they adopt data science and business intelligence, and would love to hear how is that working inside UPS?
Great starter question. So UPS has really honed in on democratization of analytics, which is an exciting space. So my team sits in the business, which is very unique for an enterprise as large as UPS, $100 billion company, over 500,000 employees, to have that level of control over an IT space within the business is not only unique, but so advantageous because it puts us so much closer to the stakeholder. So I report up to the CFO. CIO is on a supported side of the house, which is always an interesting space. And I've had the honor of working for a number of different companies from both angles in IT. The structure is very different, very black and white. When you sit in the business, you're so much closer to the problems and the solutions that it creates a lot more control over what those solutions might look like. It also, when we think about democratization, like I mentioned earlier, it also allows us to really cater and customize our solutions based on the needs of the stakeholders. So very unique space at UPS, but very exciting.
Well, so I'd be curious to hear, given where you sit and that it's a little unique being under the CFO, what kind of strategic challenges does your group get involved in?
Most of our challenges are related to how can we get data quicker, insights faster? How can we deliver those answers in the most rapid way possible, in the most optimized way possible? So a lot of the work, or actually most of the work that my team is focused on, is all future forward. So creating data assets that don't currently exist within the organization. So it truly augments their line of sight. And when you think about actionable insights, incorporating things like machine learning or even generative AI, we're truly creating something that is net new, that has not existed before our team within the finance space, which again is one of the things that really enticed me about this role when I onboarded with UPS about 2 years ago. Building this team from scratch and starting to build a vision as well as that strategic roadmap and creating that traction with use cases along the way was really, really exciting and first opportunity for me to do so.
Huh, that is really cool. I mean, I love that notion too of having a single North Star of we want to get our insights faster. I'm curious to ask you a really nerdy question here, which is how are you measuring that speed? Is there a specific metric you've been adopting across your projects that points to we as
Yeah.
UPS are moving faster?
So we typically follow standard measurements, and when we think about ROI, it's typically how much quicker can we get to an answer. So let's say that we are providing insights on our financial results for the month. Perhaps it may take 10 business days for the business to traditionally deliver those results. We may be able to provide that in far less time in a much more advanced way. So rather than having to work through spreadsheets as we all do, those answers are all, the machines are all putting those algorithms through the work. And so that way my team can really spend the time to understand what the results look like and then tap into things where we could potentially change the future. So it's really forward thinking, like I mentioned earlier.
Huh. That's cool. That's cool. What other kind of projects do you find your team getting into?
A lot of what we're doing right now is related to forecasting. And so forecasting all of our core metrics is something that is top of mind for the entire organization. UPS has had some amazing years in the last couple of years, and now we're trying to figure out what our new normal looks like past that COVID bump that we received. So being able to reforecast and be able to catch up with the numbers before they actually happen is one of the priorities. Another focus point is really just around modernization of how we use our data. So modernizing our tech platform, we've migrated to GCP shop, and then adding in other technologies such as Gemini AI or Vertex AI, or making investments in SaaS Via, for example, to really bring the best experience not only to the development space but also to the front end stakeholder space. And the vision is all about putting data at the forefront, creating a digitally fluent culture. So the IT aspect of IT is not just sallied to the folks that are in IT. We want everyone along for the ride with us. And I think when we think about adoption, that's the only way that we're going to get traction is if we bring everyone along for the ride with us.
Yeah, I love that. Well, also as I'm hearing it too, if what you're involved in is foresight and forecasting, you're the ones who can predict where the future is going to lie. You're also at the edge of technology that I imagine every single group inside of UPS wants to work with you or is trying to find some bandwidth from your team or your capabilities. And so you talk about wanting to scale this across UPS. How are you today finding ways to scale your team's impact or to do more?
It's honestly difficult to do so. There's a lot on our ask list, but not as much amount of teams for us to really spread the work. So expansion of my team is one of the goals as we move into the rest of the year, so that way we can really start to accelerate the execution as we move into 2025. But again, kind of going back to the long-term vision, where do we want to be? And as a supporting function, what is our role in the grand scheme of things? Is it truly augmenting the work that we do now? Is it replacing and optimizing current work? Is it supporting from a foundational perspective? And I think our sort of niche place is augmenting what we do today. So not necessarily replacing what the work is doing. There's other IT functions that can work on things like process automation using RPA tools like UiPath, for example. That's not our value add. Our value add is adding net incremental capabilities to the business. So when we think about the exciting word within my team right now is experimentation. How can we really put our data to the test and incorporate non-traditional data sets to really work through those algorithms and test our forecasting and see whether they're truly viable or not? So looking at things like market intelligence, for example, industry intelligence, for example, even competitive data, for example, creating those really robust data sets and putting them to the test and really experimenting is where that exciting piece lies. And like I mentioned, the focal point is always going to be around augmenting what we do today.
Yeah. I love that. Well, I'm curious about this notion of experimentation. There's always a question of what data can we gather, or what can we try out to prove whether or not this new method will work. How do you all approach experiments, and how do you what's the level of proof that you look to gather to say, yeah, we should double down here?
So we typically have a benchmark, and that benchmark is the business results. How much better can we be than those business results is always our goal. So as we spend our time, and I do have a very lean team, so time is always on the shorter side of things. But once we go through the motions of, let's say, incorporating a net new data set into our algorithms for the machines to learn to see how much better our accuracy rates will become. During that experimentation phase, tracking over time how much better they're going to be and whether it is worthwhile of a venture for us to truly include that data set enterprise wide.
Hmm.
One of the really easy ways to do this is running pilots. And I've done this in other organizations really well, running A/B tests, taking a portion of your data, whether it's a region or whether it's a certain product category, for example, and applying those experimentations versus trying to achieve everything all at once, and then proving out a theory. And sometimes the theory fails and it has no impact to the bottom line, and sometimes it's a huge difference on the result. So it's going through the motions of experimentation and then talking through what those results are and why they're so much better to our stakeholders. And oftentimes it's not the experimentation part that's difficult. It's the adoption part and getting that buy-in from our stakeholders to change the way that they're thinking, to change the way that they're doing their work, and getting that buy-in.
Well, so I'm curious because there are two things you hit on there, which is one, running smart experiments to test and prove out new ways of working, and two was you talked about augmentation. I'm curious, could you share a story with us where you've worked with another team to help to experiment in a new place in a way that augments the work that they do?
Yeah, great question. So, when my team started up 2 years ago, we took on marginal costing. So very simplistic, updating marginal costing factors. When one of my chief data scientists started with my team late last year, that was the first project that I tasked her with, was to unwind that process. Let's get those factors up to date. And then let's take a look at the process. What we quickly found were a couple of things. The first, the process itself was extremely archaic,
Mm-hmm.
using extremely archaic technology that is just simply not used in today's world. The second thing was that the analysis that was provided was simply reporting on factors. There were no analytics related to that. There was no machine learning related to that. There was no experimentation related to that. So we took that into two pieces. The first was, let's just get the factors updated so the business can operationally have the best marginal costing factors available to them.
Yeah. So when you're talking about marginal costing, so I'm trying to understand. So would that be like you're trying to understand the margin that goes into shipping with a given customer, different customer type? And so what you're trying to learn is what are really the factors that are driving our cost basis in here? And are these real? Because I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that you've used anecdotally or in the past that are built into UPS systems. And so you're really playing with like, what does it need to be to understand our cost basis better? Right,
exactly. And more results oriented, not necessarily how we're getting those numbers or what those numbers are encompassing of, but what are the results and how are they shifting over time and how are our costs increasing and decreasing and why?
Yeah.
So the second phase of that is where the experimentation comes in, and spending some time to unwind the whole process and understand from a production standpoint, what does it take and what should it take to produce these numbers? And then how deep can we go into these numbers to truly understand those volume drivers, those cost drivers, those revenue drivers, and what should we be doing differently? We haven't gotten there yet. That's where right now starting up that experimentation part, but it's really exciting work that just hasn't been done yet in the organization.
That's cool. And so how does that help to augment the team? You talked about one of the things you want to do is democratize data science across UPS. And so I'm curious to hear when you engage with a team to start playing with, hey, we need to look at new factors and how we're doing marginal costing. How do you start to scale what your team does, even in an engagement like that?
Yeah, so there's a couple facets to that. The first is defining what exactly our role it is going to be going forward in this project. It's not necessarily replacing the analysis work that happens today. It's to augment the work from an analytics and data science point of view. So providing different theories based on what we're finding. And we don't know what we're going to find just yet, which is the exciting part, because there could be so many layers, as you start to peeling back an onion, for example, as you start to play those numbers and peel back the layers, there could be a lot of information that has just been untouched because we A, haven't had the skills to do this, or B, someone just hasn't had the idea to do it, or C, we just haven't had the time to do it. So creating, devoted time and capacity across teams is one thing. But when you think about scalability, it's scoping a project in terms of where do we stop? How much time are we going to spend on this? And in the scale of everything else that we're working on, how much resources should be dedicated to this experimentation? And right now that's open-ended because we don't know how far we're going to go until we get there. So right now we're going through the motions of peeling back those layers, which is really fun.
Huh. That's kind of fun. Yeah, it definitely feels like a lot of the work that you're in is on the wild frontier and trying to explore, hey, it seems like there's a lot of value and bounty out here. And can we unlock it? Yeah, that's really cool. Well, I'd be curious to hear something we've been seeing across many of the clients that we work with is this question of data science feels like it's a capability that needs to be just about everywhere. All of our work is driven by data now and needs to be data driven. It's so funny. It almost feels cliche to see that listed on people's job descriptions, that we're looking for data driven people when all work is data driven work. But I'd be curious to hear, as I hear there's a cool model inside of UPS of how you're helping more people to adopt sort of a data science mindset as they approach their work. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that cultural change you're trying to drive and some of the methods you're using.
Yeah, so the cultural change is very deep rooted, and the success of UPS we have this, what I call the Chick-fil-A secret sauce, right? They've got it all figured out in terms of how we're getting those packages to someone's front door. What we need to do is modernize the way we work internally. So during the first couple of months, when I first started UPS back in 2022, had a really great conversation with our then CFO, Brian Newman, and he has a purely finance background. What he told me, though, was that he realizes the future of the CFO is not going to be a finance person. It's going to be a data science person. That's where the light bulb goes off. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. And that is that exact sentence that we need to start globalizing across the organization if we want to have this data-driven change. And for me, I've been in data my entire career, 17 years now. That's what I see. I'm always looking through that lens for a person who is not necessarily upfront with the data and is more on the logistics side or more on the business side, they're not necessarily going to think through what does it mean to be data-driven. So how do we embed this into our corporate culture? There's a couple different facets. The first is simply talking about it. And there's a lot of buzzwords going on right now. Gen AI is one of them. But it was when Gen AI or ChatGPT came out early with their open source software early last year, that was sort of the right point to add to that buzzword and kind of hop on that bandwagon to try to get the messaging across. So hosting a number of sessions that enterprise-wide as well as organization-wide to talk about what exactly does it mean to each individual. We're not expecting you to become a data scientist. We're not expecting you to change the way we work. What we just want you to be cognizant of is the importance of that data and the power of the amount of data that UPS has and little pieces that you can start to think about as you're doing your work. So we hosted things like book clubs. There's a really great book called The Digital Mindset. It's somewhere on my bookshelf back here. We hosted a book club, for example. It talks about really simplistic ways to start to think about being digitally. One of the interesting things, though, as we think about our personal lives, is virtually every single person is interacting with that digital experience every single day. And it's just through your cell phone. It's just through your smart TV. It's just through your washer and dryer that you might have an app on your phone that tells you, hey, you need to change your filter, or, there's so many things that those smart apps bring to the table. But all of that are steps towards becoming digitally fluent, embedding that digital world into your own personal culture. How do we extend that within UPS? So the next problem, well, not necessarily problem, but next hurdle to tackle was, how do we get traction from a skill set standpoint? So like most companies in the last year or so, we've been really, really rigid with our spending. So that posed the, no, we can't go out and hire 100 data scientists. So how do we solve the skill set gap internally? So I set out to create what we call the Citizen Data Science Development Program. We've been working on it for almost 2 years now. We ran a pilot last year, highly customized program for finance. The overall goal is to make this an enterprise-wide program, but we tested in a really small group last year. What I was able to create was a long experience. Runs for about a year, and it's in 2 sections. The first section is, there's sort of this prerequisite piece I want to talk about. So we go through this really rigid nomination process where I ask leaders to identify who they think are high potential and who has the aptitude to get involved with data science. We're asking for people that are curious, that are champions of what they do, that are always bringing ideas to the table, that they're asking the why. I don't necessarily care if you only have ever worked in Excel. I don't necessarily care if you only know how to write SQL. We're going to help you down that path. What I want you to have specifically is the mindset of change, a mindset of innovation, because we can't teach someone that. I mean, you can, but it's a much harder teach than just teaching someone how to write SQL. So we targeted individuals like that, and we put them through a year-long program. The first half was boot camp style training for data science, live instructor, ton of content. They ended the program with a capstone project. And the second half, which is the more exciting part of the program, is what we call rotational applied learning. So I take them under my wing. And the first part of that is them simply observing the kind of work that real data scientists do on a day-to-day. Simply observation, the ability to ask hard questions, the ability to be curious. And then we partner them up with different areas of the business to execute on their own projects. So they spend all this time learning. Then we're going to have them spend that same amount of time executing an actual real life use case. And at the end of the year, they'll come out with not only have developed a project completely on their own, but essentially a brand new bullet point on their resume saying, hey, I've accomplished all these net new skills. And this is the tangible project that I was able to implement within the business that's used today. So really exciting program. This year, we grew that group by more than double. So there's quite a bit of funding that goes alongside that, partnership with the vendor that we partnered with, a company called General Assembly for the bootcamp training. And then also the partnership with the business, because they are giving up some of their, golden stars to spend time with us. And so being able to talk through the story, and to be honest, it's been one of the most exciting things that I've talked about. And I'm a data person. I'm not a learning and development person or HR person by any means. So it was a really unique problem for me to solve when I started with the organization, but probably one of the more exciting ones, because for me, it's the impact that we're making. And when we talk about that first sentence around democratization, this is how we do it. It's not necessarily going out and just hiring 100 new data scientists. It's really nurturing the culture of UPS by taking the people that are already there that we've identified as high potential, investing in them, and then seeing that ROI come back around full circle. They're energized, they're motivated, they've learned all these new things, they have a new certificate under their wing, they've accomplished all this, and then in return, UPS is getting all of this new talent that lives in the business.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I mean, it's so cool because I can see how it's individually motivating for folks and has direct benefit to growing the capability inside UPS. One thing I'd be curious about is I often see lots of business leaders, when they have high potential folks, they hold on to those people very tightly because that's the future of their group. That's their performance and results are going to come from those folks. What have you found is sort of the carrot to help get more of those high potential people who I'm sure are very interested in this program to be part of it? Is there something you found that helps unlock the business leaders to say, yes, you can have my high potential people for rotations and things like that?
Joe, that's a fantastic question. Actually, probably the most unique answer you're ever going to hear. And this is siloed to UPS. I have not seen this in any other organization. But on a typical basis, when a leader identifies hey, I have a high potential individual, they're not holding on. Instead, they're creating open doorways for them to grow within their career. And that is part of that secret sauce that UPS has been built on is internal growth and really believing in their people. So rather than saying, hey, my chief data scientist, for example, is a rising star. Do I want to hold on to her? 1,000,000,000%. Will I? No, because she needs to continue to grow. So I will take her under my wing and coach her and give her some new skills. We'll get some use cases off the floor, and then, kind of let her free after a couple of years to move on to something else within the organization, because the impact that she's making for me could be that much more impactful to other areas where they don't have data science at all. And that was a very interesting thing to observe when I first started UPS, because in that growth within, you hear a lot about it, but you don't actually see it. And this is why the majority of what we call UPSers, especially at headquarters, have always been with UPS. And they, started as interns. A typical UPSer started as an intern or started out on the floor, even started out as a driver, worked their way throughout the organization. Many UPSers have worked across different areas within the organization. They bounce from operations, they bounce to supply chain, they bounce to sales, all across the board. And that's where we talk about nurturing culture. UPS really, really excels in that. So, I haven't had to necessarily coach or talk anyone out of it. It was more about the short-term commitment of scaling a couple of hours per week to spend on this program. But the long-term, they're all for it. And it really speaks to the company and the corporate culture as a whole.
Nice. So I'd be curious if the culture change starts from, we're going to take high potential folks within given business units, we're going to help them grow their skills. I imagine that would mean eventually you'll have a nice network of alums who have passed through this program. They can coach and support each other. Are there other ways you're thinking about pushing and scaling that beyond this program? How are you hoping to scale data science further?
Yeah. So great question. I think we have to do it in layers. And the first layer right now is just proving out viability, that it's worth the investment, and continuing to customize and tweak based on feedback. Super important to me. Really great example of that is during the boot camp. It was 15 weeks, grueling work, a couple times a week, meeting in live and then homework. Midway through, many students told me that they were just exhausted. So baking in a break or a couple of breaks during that boot camp was essential for them to, not get burnt out, manage their work, still have time with their family, and still be committed to the program. So for me, it's continuously having that feedback loop so I can curate the program. And that's a great thing about having ownership of the program, is that I have direct impact on the future, what it's going to look like. So what I would like to do is a couple iterations of the program and have eventually a couple swim lanes, because right now I have a number of different levels of expertise in one program. So we have some that are complete novices. Data science is very new to them. They're seeing Python for the first time. And then we have some that have already dabbled in this, and some of the work is a refresher, but they just want to know more about how to apply it in the real world. When we bring them all together in one table, it's a little bit of a struggle for those that are on either ends of the spectrum. So what I would like to have is several swim lanes running at the same time: beginner, intermediate, advanced levels. Once we can prove the viability of that and have it fully functioning and working, what I'd like to do is work with our L&D departments that are housed under HR to create a enterprise-wide program. This is going to be a long undertaking because it takes time to build something like this. I anticipate it to be at least 2 or 3 more rotations, which equates to years. So we probably won't see that enterprise-wide traction for at least a couple of years. But one of the ideas that we've been bouncing around is having the same pilot programs run in parallel within other departments. Don't know what those departments might look like, whether it's sales and marketing, they could certainly benefit from it, or whether it could be on the operations side of the house, they could also certainly benefit from it. But having to scale it where I'm still having the ability to customize and curate, but creating a little bit of independence around the execution and day-to-day management of the program. But that's where we plan to take it long term.
Yeah, it seems like there's an interesting tension in there too of you want to scale this change, you want to see this capability across all of UPS, but at the same time, you right now work in a group that it's not a center of excellence, but it's kind of a center of excellence. And so there's an interesting question of how do you make sure there's the quality while you see the democratization happen? Are there things you've thought about standing up to try and enable that?
Right now, it's trying to stand up those swim lanes that I
Okay.
mentioned and creating that curated program where I can truly cater to the level of expertise that you're bringing to the table at the beginning. So that is probably what this is going to evolve into next year. Granted that we get funding for that amount, which is a big ask, but we have a brand new CFO, Brian Dykes. He's amazing. He has a background with analytics. He has background with BI. He has a data background, which is really exciting for me because it gets me that much closer to my vision. My end goal is having someone that truly gets it. So I anticipate that we won't have much of a problem when it comes to funding next year.
Nice. Well, and then how are you seeing folks, are any of the folks taking things that they learned through the program and starting to act as coaches or guides for others? Are you seeing right now you have a lot of things coming out from the center. I'm curious whether that's going to start spreading on its own.
Yeah, great question. In some ways, yes. And what we've been bouncing ideas around is creating like a data science hangout, informal conversations that are fixed, whether it's monthly and assigned agenda, or whether it's truly just having a conversation like this. Bring those people with the same ideas that have gone through the same training, but they're out in their own worlds executing and trying to uncover challenges and business problems to apply their net new data science skills, bringing them back and together as a group and learning from each other is one of the things that we're talking through right now. Is what is the best venue to do that? Is it a sort of unofficial hangout? Is it a more formal center of excellence? I'm probably leaning towards something that's a little bit more informal, because what I don't want to do is just create more work for anyone. I want it to be something that's fruitful, that's valuable. So if it's something that's optional where you can sit and have a virtual cup of coffee, or those that are based in like offices can meet in person and go to lunch and just have chit chats around what they're working on and challenges and sharing struggles and sharing new technology that they've learned about. I think it's bringing those like people together in the same room to continue the conversation, and that's how we're going to get that true scalable democratization.
So if the program is wildly successful sounds like it already is, but
And it will be.
if it continues to be wildly successful in say 5 years or 10 years, and data science feels like it's reached saturation, it is actually just a part of the way UPS gets the job done. What do you think that looks like?
I don't know what that looks like because I've never seen it before. And that's the exciting part of this, is being a part of creating something that is very new to the culture. The nice thing that I mentioned earlier is that the culture is already so giving in terms of new learning, nurturing, really, really caring for the individuals that are getting the job done. So it will be, I don't know what the culture is going to look like. I think it's going to be an exciting space. And I think that the data skills in general will only continue to grow. I anticipate in the next 5 to 10 years, it'll be core curriculum in high schools. And I think the world will just continue to advance, much like we've seen in the last couple of decades. There were times when basic computer typing classes were not a part of the curriculum. Now 2-year-olds know how to type. So, it really speaks to generational change. And, within the next 5 to 10 years, I think it's going to become a core skill that everyone needs to know, much like taking a math class.
That's cool. That is cool. I'm also curious to hear, as you live on the bleeding edge of where the logistics industry is going. If you think of more of these data-driven techniques and technologies unlocking the future of logistics, what do you think that looks like? What do you think are some of the big changes coming to the industry?
It's exciting. And, logistics is not my background by any means. Logistics is very new to me. It's the first organization that I've worked for that is in the logistics industry. And I've seen it through a couple different lenses. I've worked for healthcare and for manufacturing and big tech and small tech. And it's a little different based on industry. the exciting thing with logistics is that AI and technology has been in the forefront in delivering those packages every day for a really long time. On that side of the house, they are so advanced. In fact, I had when I was in Atlanta, actually we recently relocated to Dallas, but I was in Atlanta prior to, and I had the opportunity to visit one of UPS's smart hubs. Astonished by how automated a warehouse the size of a shopping mall was. Yeah. Robots everywhere, very few human beings. You would think that there would be hundreds, if not thousands of human beings operating that warehouse, but no, it was completely automated. Tons of robots. Everything was just so optimized and meticulous. It was mind-boggling to see. And that is the typical experience of a modern logistics company. Amazon is very similar. I'm sure our other competitors are as well. Actually, there is an Amazon hub here that I'd love to go and tour. It's open for I won't tell them I work for UPS, but I will go and take a tour and see what they're up to. But this is the way that the logistics world is going. And they have been on the technology front end for a very long time. It just hasn't been labeled during that hype cycle. And once we hit these, the buzzwords come in, Bitcoin was a big one at one point. Right now, it's all about Gen AI and what does that mean? And are robots going to take over? And, Terminator 1 and Terminator 2 are going to come to real life. No, it's not going to happen. But it's all the front end because everyone is talking about it. But the logistics world has been in it, living it for a really, really long time. We just weren't aware of it.
Yeah, I love that. I'd be curious to hear, as you're thinking about all the buzzwords that are out there, what are the next buzzwords you think are on the horizon? If you had to put your chips down for your group to prepare them for the future that's coming and for what what third-party logistics companies and your customers and clients are looking out for, where do you think you need to go next?
I think it's going to be Gen AI evolved, and I think new terms are going to be invented that are AI related. And it's going to be mostly around applicability to technology. So ChatGPT brought about the ability to have a chatbot conversation and get real world answers as well as analyses around imagery. I think that is going to continue. So perhaps what I anticipate is not necessarily buzzwords for the hype cycle, but taglines for new technology. So, for example, sentiment is something that we don't typically analyze. It's something that with the newer emergence of a lot of the AI tech, we have the ability to analyze sentiment. But do we truly do that? Not so much. But having technology that can measure sentiment is a big one. Another really interesting use case that I've seen recently is the applicability of AI to healthcare, which is huge. Mm-hmm. But that poses a couple considerations, both ethical as well as trust. Do you trust the say of the doctor, or do you trust the say of the machine? And I think it's really the convergence of the two and keeping the human in the loop, which is another really big tagline right now, but keeping humans in the loop and making sure that humans have control. So that way, Skynet doesn't take over like in the Terminator movies. But I think we're going to have derivatives of AI, and it's just functionality that's going to be adopted on top of the already existing AI functionality.
Nice. Oh, I like that. So as you have to stay at the forefront of technology and of data science to serve UPS, where do you seek inspiration?
For me, it's great question. For me, it's going out and listening. Talking through venues, whether it's social dinners that are local, whether it's big conferences, whether it's tech talks, whether it's simply just reaching out into my local community and finding people that are passionate about data. For me, it's through the lens of other experiences. That's how I see and am able to also share my experiences. And it's something that I typically advocate for my teams is go out and get uncomfortable. I say it often. You may not want to go to a big global conference and have a say in it, or perhaps you may not want to go to dinner with 50 other strangers, but what may come out of those conversations could be life-changing because there are so many other experiences. We're all going through the same challenges. Some are tackling them better than others. Let's all work together to share those opinions, share the challenges, work on the solutions together. And for me, there is so much value in not only career-wise, but also from a personal capacity and just having the conversations and seeing where they go, going out and getting a little uncomfortable and getting out of your, especially for a traditional techie person like myself is naturally interpersonal. I'm very much a person that likes to stay at home and, is comfortable rolling solo. However, but it has taken years for me to nurture those communication skills and nurturing those social skills for me to feel comfortable to go up on stages and share my thoughts around where we're going data wise, or sharing my thoughts on our upskilling program, for example, or asking the hard questions to CEOs and CIOs that I wouldn't necessarily have an otherwise opportunity to sit at the same table with. So for me, it's really exciting. It's been an exciting space. It definitely puts a challenge on my plate to do so. And that's what I would challenge the listeners here, is to go out and get social.
I love that. I love that. The future is not on your couch. And if you want to grow, it's going to be uncomfortable. I love that. So
Yes.
seek places to grow. So Stefanie, where can our listeners find you? Where can they follow you or learn more about what you're working on?
Great question. I am extremely active on LinkedIn, and that is typically my biggest outlet because, as you all know, you can reach a billion viewers, a billion readers in a matter of a millisecond on LinkedIn. So for me, that's the most powerful social outlet that is professionally driven, and that's where you'll see a lot of the work that I'm doing posted about.
Sweet. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been lots of fun to chat.
Happy to be here. Thanks so much, Joe.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to This is Digital. If you enjoyed today's show, please follow or subscribe on your preferred podcast app. And don't forget to leave us a review. For more information on This is Digital, visit westmonroe.com/thisisdigital.